wondering, how do you think we should deal with this situation? Because it really would be good to persuade the Indians not to buy so much. In other words, their actions are hurting European security.
Yeah.
What do we do?
But nobody likes being bullied, right? As a short guy, trust me, I don't like being bullied, right? And India is a sovereign country that's got a rich history of independence. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to break that relationship. We should try to figure out how to do it in the most diplomatic way possible, in the quickest way possible. And the taking the hammer to the nail right away clearly did not work. It actually backfired. It actually only pushed, Modi closer to Russia and China. So this is when, the back channel conversations should be happening. This is when we can bring in other partners that may have good relationships with India that could also be talking to them. Maybe we can find a way to get them off, Russian oil onto whatever oil. But the fist to face policy did not work. And if we continue doing that, you're just going to break your.
Dear guests, I know some are still flowing in. We've had a slight traffic challenge, so there's a busload or so of people coming in. Welcome to the people joining us on the stream. My name is Charlie Salonius-Pasternak. I am a long-time, staffer of the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. Right now, I'm at the Nordic West office. Pleasure that you could join us online. Pleasure that all of you could come here, and especially that we are joined by Senator Ruben Gallego, Democrat from Arizona. As some of you noticed, there was going to be another senator here, but unfortunately, he was prevented from traveling. I won't go through the whole long bio other than say senator, a decade at the House of Representatives, and something that warms my heart as a Finnish reservist, you're a veteran, U.S. Marine Corps, 2000 to 2006. Senator Gallego is also a friend of Finland, and I guess it's a shout out to how you got to be here is to Tytti Tuppurainen, who's an MP in Finland. She's unable to be here, though. Now, I'm going to start with a little bit of audience participation, which may be unexpected. So there's, as you might have gathered, a lot of concern about Trump administration's, what signals it's sending in terms of what it does, budgeting, and so on. You, however, spearheaded a letter with about a dozen colleagues just the other day, where you were challenging, this is a letter to both Secretaries Rubio and Hegseth, we're challenging the termination of the Baltic Security Initiative, among other things. Let me just quote one thing in the letter. It says, "This termination is a critical betrayal of commitments to our allies." I, again, think it's amazing that we have people like you to stand up and try to help and support allies. So this is where the audience participation comes in. Please, could I have a round of applause to Senator Gallego?
Thank you.
Now, could you tell me a little bit, since we're on the letter, what was the genesis of this? Why have this letter?
Well, for me, it's just personal because I authored the Baltic Security Initiative. I was on the Armed Services Committee for 10 years. And at one point it was the chairman of what's called the Baltic Caucus. And after reading some studies, visiting our Baltic friends, I realized that there was a problem and that we in the United States could actually provide a very good solution here. And for many years we worked with our Baltic allies and helped them coordinate, buy the weapons they need, try to get them even more fully integrated in terms of their defense. This was something that started under Obama, when it went into Trump 1, and then even into Biden, and suddenly it's just kind of the rug got pulled from him. And secondarily, I think it's a really bad message to be sending out right now, right? We need to be doing everything we can to reassure our partners. We need to reassure our friends across the Atlantic that we're here in the fight with them, that we have a long-term vision of joint cooperation. And we need to be sending a message to Putin that we are sticking with our friends. But when he when the president and the administration pulled that funding, it was not at a great time. It's at the moment and still to this day, Russia was being aggressive, overly aggressive, and what message and signals are we sending to Russia when we go and we cut this type of fund that is designed to deter them, while they're actually at the same time doing all the aggressive actions. That's not the message that we want to convey, certainly not in Congress. I don't know what the president wants to convey, though, so that's why I sent that letter out.
All right. Well, very much appreciated. So it seems quite clear that your view on European security is multi-layered. I mean, we're allies because of NATO politically, sure, but then there is kind of minilateral relationships. You also have bilateral defense cooperation agreements. Could you talk us a little bit through your views on institutionally and then in practice how you see European security look like from Washington?
Well, I think the relationship architecture, it starts with NATO, goes into the economic relationship between the EU and the United States. I think there's also the relationship that exists between your elected officials. I value a lot of the relationships I have, whether it's with my Baltic friends, parliamentarians here, parliamentarians from the UK. I think James is somewhere around here, a friend of mine from the Conservative Party, and I think that's the things that we have to continue to build on. This president's going to come and go, right? He's going to be gone in 3 years. The relationships, the institutions that have really welded us together for so many years needs to continue to happen, and we have to kind of continue building on top of that. And that's how you can really make it through these waves that we're having right now. Because right now this is a very difficult time. I recognize that, especially the way that I think we're communicating in terms of our relationship with Europe through this president. But I think the more we can layer on our relationships, the more likely that we can withstand these low points, so to call them.
All right. So having also watched a little bit of local Arizona news, so if we have a President Gallego in 2029, what are the first things you would do regarding buttressing or strengthening the transatlantic relationship? What do you think should be done now?
That's a good try. I think what every president should do in the future is, number one, we have to reassure our steadfast support that we will enforce Article 5. I think there is a lot of testing happening right now by Russia to see how far and deep our relationships and our trust is in each other. I think we have to continue to have more cooperation in terms of defense production. One of the things that I think that could really integrate our both sides of the Atlantic is making sure that when we're producing our weaponry, whether it's, for example, the F-35, but any other type of weaponry, that it's kind of co-produced by both partners. That will, I think, continue to really bind us over time. I think the cultural exchanges really matter also. And really having a very clear alignment about where we want to go as a country and how, it's the United States, where we want to go as a country and how we need our European partners to be part of that future. And that future is pretty fraught. We can't deal with China on our own. We can't deal with a rising China on our own. We need to have friends all over the world, but especially friends that have alignment with us in terms of values, in terms of history. But the way that we're going about that right now, it's going to make it very difficult for us to have friends that are willing to kind of stand with us when, should something happen with China. Let's hope it doesn't. But these are the things that we have to really factor and think about.
All right. I was going to ask about China before we go into deeper. You mentioned Russia has been testing us, and it's been kind of the talk of every panel so far this morning. We recognize that things happen behind closed doors, out of the view of the public. But are you happy with the U.S. response, politically, militarily, to what we've seen in Poland, Estonia yesterday? Too soon to tell?
No, I'm not, just to be plain and honest. Look, I think Putin's a bully. I think Russia only understands strength and hard pushbacks. I think this president, President Trump, who's willing to basically push anyone around in the world except for Putin, it's just... I can't really comprehend what the thought process is. But Putin is testing not just us testing President Trump. And it's just a series of escalations, whether it's the drones over Poland, the flyover here in Estonia. We'll see what recently came about through these cybersecurity attacks. Every day it's a push, and when we don't respond, it only encourages more and more negative action from Russia. And so the president and his administration need to figure out how to calibrate their response. So there is the political aspects of it, there's the public aspects of it, and there needs to be other levels of ways for us to respond to this rising escalation. I don't think we should go hot in any nature, but anything below the threshold of war should be on the table. And this administration is not even thinking in terms of those policies or that perspective. Right now, there is a bill, the Blumenthal-Graham bill, or if you're a Republican, the Graham-Blumenthal bill, whatever you want to call it. It has more than 72 senators that are signed on to it. There's nothing that popular, by the way, ever in Congress. You could get 72 Democrats and Republicans to be supportive, and yet, on the orders of Donald Trump, that Senate bill still has not gotten to the floor. And a real message that this administration can send to Putin because of his overt actions is to send that bill to the floor, pass it, and start seeing the consequences of their actions.
I mean, I think it would be great also because it would be a reminder to everyone on this side of the Atlantic, but also probably in Indo-Pacific, that there are things that the U.S. senior foreign policy establishment can agree on that should be done together.
Yes, I mean, I think the problem is that there is just foreign policy right now stems from whatever the president thinks. It's not our kind of traditional statecraft. It's whether it's the feelings he has that day and how he feels the outcomes will do. And, he kind of looks at the world as if he's trying to develop another piece of property on Manhattan or Queens or wherever he used to do that. And he doesn't quite go by the rules that we understand, what we've always known. And I think that's why it really confounds everybody. And then within his own administration, you have two camps. You have your traditionalists, and then you have, I think, some of your isolationists. And whoever can get to him last is essentially what ends up being the policy decision of the day, which causes a lot of chaos, causes a lot of mistrust. All these things that I think both traditional Democrats and Republicans would want to avoid. And I think there's some good attempts at changing that. President Stubb has been great. He has opened a direct line of communication with the president. I think they have a very trusting relationship with each other. I think he brings in a very good perspective of being on the front lines of dealing with Russia. He's a really good golfer. That matters in this White House. I wish it wasn't the case, but it does. And but I'm glad that he's able to leverage that relationship in order for to move forward some of the policy agendas I think that Finland wants, but also I think a lot of us in the United States want too.
Okay. So it has been reported that talking about strategy, the upcoming U.S. national security strategy, and this is again public reports, I'm sure you have seen the actual version of it, that it emphasizes domestic and Western hemisphere as priorities. What's your view on this, or has it been over-reported? Is it a...
I really hope that's not true. I think that'd be the dumbest thing that we could ever do. The existential threat to the United States isn't, drugs. I mean, drugs are a problem. They are destabilizing to the countries in Latin America. They're a problem in terms of our addiction and crime in this country, but it's not what would cause the eventual erosion of American influence and power around the world. It is a rising China. Our whole national defense strategy, our whole posture, even when it comes to our basing, when it comes to how we buy our weapons, what weapons we're buying, what weapons we're buying for the future, are intended to stop a rising China, or to meet the demand of a rising China. If we're suddenly going to move our national defense strategy and say that it's going to be a Western Hemisphere focus, then there needs to be a real conversation, first of all, with the American public, because where is the $1.1 trillion defense budget going to be going to? Certainly, you don't need that if you're going after Venezuelan fishing boats. Secondarily, it would just be such a debacle on a scale that I think we have not done in quite a while, that it would basically announce that we are receding from the world, that we are no longer going to be the guarantor of democracy and our alliances. I can't believe that they're going to go. I hope that's not where they're going. I think there is a lot of conversation about trying to have some focus more in the Western Hemisphere, but you don't need that much to do that. And we have some great allies in the Western Hemisphere that are willing to also be helpful while still being able to, obviously focus on the threats around the world, including here and potentially in the Indo-PACOM.
All right, so no Monroe Doctrine for the 21st century yet. All right. To China and then maybe also Europe. Do you think the strategic thinking then maybe has changed or not regarding China? And then a follow-up question, what do you see as being the things that European allies should be ready to deliver or support the U.S. in case of I'll call it a China, Taiwan, whatever contingency you like?
In terms of, just to be clarified, in terms of the shift in strategy from whom?
In the Trump administration.
I think stated policy so far is still that China is the pacing threat. No. The way that we have, and Congress has funded the military is to meet the China demand, right? And the demand signal that comes from Indo-PACOM. Unless this administration makes an official policy announcement, I don't think that changes. And even if they do that, I think there's still going to be a lot of institutional pushback from Democrats and Republicans, just because we know that would just be a horrible mistake. So what does that look like? Where do we need Europe, and how do we need Europe going to the future? Well, again, sometimes it's just an issue of numbers, right? We have a very strong economy. China has a strong economy, but with EU and the United States working together, that's a very, very strong economy, something that we could use versus leverage against China. We see what happens when China wants to look for friends. They went to Russia, they went to India. They were trying to send a very strong message to us. Our message back should be locking hands with our friends here and showing how much it helps to have friends that are aligned in values and in goals. What does a future look like? Look, I think China is seeing a lot of what's happening in Ukraine. They're seeing the reaction by the world order, seeing what the diplomatic reaction has been, what the economic reaction has been, and they're calibrating their potential responses in case something happens between China and Taiwan. They want to know, can they survive economic sanctions? They want to know who will walk away from an alliance with us or sticking with us. They want to see the determination of the United States and our transatlantic partners. How long are we willing to stay in the fight to keep Ukraine a viable sovereign country? And they're taking lessons every day. And if we don't respond well, the response or the actions by China are going to be very strong, very efficient, and will likely be designed to create a real schism between us and Europe.
And concretely, since it comes up in Finland and elsewhere too, I'm guessing no one in the Senate or Pentagon is actually thinking that we need boots on the ground there. But what kind of things do you think the Europeans should be able to contribute? Is it cyber operations against whoever?
Well, I mean, not everyone not boots in the ground from everyone, but I think there'd be some level of support we'd appreciate. But economic support in terms of just supporting us in terms of sanction regimes, cybersecurity, yes, That's really important. Other small things, for example, making sure that Huawei is not integrated into the communications capability of countries, especially those that are that we share sensitive material with. That was a big fight we had engaged with for many years. I think taking up responsibility in other areas that would free us up to move and move in a very strategic, quick way if we had to into PACOM could be helpful. And of course, there's just lots of other ways it could be helpful. We have partners over there that we aren't necessarily going to be able to work with all the time. There is some traditional alliances and relationships here that are better aligned with some of these countries in Indo-PACOM. Love to be able to lean on those relationships, or lean on some of the history there. We are going to have to be able to be very nimble and very fast should something happen, because I do think the goal of a China-Taiwan conflict is to end the conflict as fast as possible and create such a level of denial for U.S. capabilities that we decide not to go to war. And that's why we're going to have a true worldwide response in order for us to be able to, I think, either stop them and or deter them from also moving in that direction.
All right, thank you. I'm going to take us from Indo-PACOM, Europe, transatlantic relations, a little bit to domestic politics.
Oh, that's easier, isn't it?
Before I open it up the floor.
Yeah.
I'd
rather talk about the others.
In different ways, we've both worn uniforms. So my question is, I guess, civil relations. In your view, what is the proper role of the U.S. military in U.S. domestic security?
Very limited, and certainly not to what is being used right now. By even like our own laws, there is nothing that gives policing power to U.S. military. Right now, the president is actually towing a fine line, and maybe many of you do not notice, but he's using the military in places where he is allowed by law and or close enough that it's hard for him to get struck down. In the long run, though, he is destroying the civil-military relationship. I think he's destroying potentially a very strong reputation that the U.S. military has with the public. It's the only thing, if you actually poll right now, that still polls well, as in it's trusted, it's apolitical, and the fact that he's trying to use it as his own personal army is, I think, going to, over time, deteriorate people's opinions of the military. Recruitment matters, too. Using this the U.S. military for some level of immigration enforcement will affect at one point or another recruitment. And we've heard some really horrible stories already of a father of 3 Marines that they got deported and rough handled. We're hearing it all the time, and I don't think Trump never served in the military. No one's fans ever served in the military. I don't think he quite understands the people that are joining the military, why they're joining it, and they certainly, it's not going to be advantageous for the U.S. military to be involved in these types of very partisan actions. It's also, as a reservist, and I was a reservist too, it's also deteriorating to training, right? These men and women, many of them aren't police officers, aren't trained police officers. They're not MPs. They have different skill sets that they need to be going to. They need to be going to training. They need to be going through their training cycles. How they get compensated also is, it can be very problematic. A lot of times these men and women are leaving, good paying civilian jobs and then going working at the National Guard, and they're not getting paid the differential. And sometimes they're only being put under 28, 29-day orders, which means they don't end up accruing any benefits. And so what happens, and we've all been in that situation, we have a spouse that's will stick with you for your first enlistment, and then after a couple of these activations where you're away from your family, you're put into debt, and you're not really doing what you're trained to focus to do, it's gonna be that one spouse says, you know what? You did your time, you served your country, time to move on. And every time someone leaves, we have to go get someone new, we have to train them, and then we're losing that institutional history that person had. Again, this president has never served, no one's family's ever served, so he doesn't understand what he's doing, but he is deteriorating the capabilities of our military every day by using them in this type of civilian action.
what I can happily say is every interaction I've ever had here, exercises elsewhere, is absolutely top notch. So at least the deterioration hasn't been visible to, I think.
Well, it just started, so yes, and I hope it doesn't happen either.
But I promised some time for questions. Who wants to be the first brave one? Because after that we get a ton. Okay, let's start here, and the next one will come here. So if you can get the two mixed.
My name is Tariff, and I would like to hear. Thank you.
And I will remind you, short questions, please.
Yes, I would like to hear your comments on the relationship between India and the US. And India is with China and Russia in the BRICS, and now there are some changes. I would like to hear your view.
It's really odd because if you look at the Indian diaspora around the world, it is the most successful in the United States. And in terms of businesses going back and forth, and like some of my best friends are Indo-Americans, there's so much business relationships, cultural relationships between the two countries. But Modi, and in general, I think Modi has continued what has been a traditional role that India has been taken for quite a while, that they're independent and they're not going to be pushed into anywhere. Trump's relationship, or when Trump tries to do international relations, he bases it all on personal relationships. And he thinks because Modi was ostensibly very supportive of him in his first election, that they did a lot of things together, that somehow that would overcome, decades and decades of India's foreign policy, or that it would excuse Donald or the president trying to bully India into a position. So right now it is very difficult. I think we do need India to work with us. I don't think we can force them to do it, but we do need them to work with us to really separate them from their dependency on Russian oil, because of course that includes our aims and goals of ending this Ukraine war. But the personal spite between the two countries right now is very much real, and it's largely focused on those two heads. It's Modi and Trump really being at a loggerhead. And again, it's a very odd situation considering if you go, some of our top CEOs are Indo-Americans. We are so aligned in so many ways, except for the one place we definitely need to be aligned at the top.
Thank you. So let's take a question here. And then there was a second one. If I can get the mic there, we'll take the questions back to back and then just short answers.
Mark Katz, George Mason University. Just following up on this last question, I do think President Trump has pointed out an important issue that Indian purchases of Russian petroleum is doing a lot to enable Russia's war against Ukraine. Now, of course, India is not the only U.S. partner that's doing this, that cooperating with Russia economically, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, one can go on and on. I'm just wondering, how do you think we should deal with this situation? Because it really would be good to persuade the Indians not to buy so much. In other words, their actions are hurting European security.
Yeah.
What do we do?
But nobody likes being bullied, right? As a short guy, trust me, I don't like being bullied, right? And India is a sovereign country that's got a rich history of independence. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to break that relationship. We should try to figure out how to do it in the most diplomatic way possible, in the quickest way possible. And taking the hammer to the nail right away clearly did not work. It actually backfired. It actually only pushed Modi closer to Russia and China. So this is when the back channel conversations should be happening. This is when we can bring in other partners that may have good relationships with India that could also be talking to them. Maybe we can find a way to get them off Russian oil onto whatever oil, but the fist-to-face policy did not work. And if we continue doing that, you're just going to break your fist.
All right, so fist-to-face did not work, and unfortunately, I'm going to have to nix the last question. I'm sorry about that. We're out of time.
I'm ending on that? Oh, man.
All right, I will let you a minute more if you have some reflection that we should think about and know about U.S. foreign policy and Senate here.
Well, look, I think you have to U.S. foreign policy is still very much traditional in the sense that we are aligned with our transatlantic partners. I think it's very difficult because we have the head of state being Donald Trump, who is kind of all over the place. But we've existed, or this relationship existed before Trump, it'll exist after Trump. I think this is a phenomena that only exists with Trump. I think you'll see the next president, Democrat or Republican, is going to have a more traditional relationship and understanding, I think, of foreign policy that is not as jarring and as quixotic as it is right now.
I think that is a great way to give us hope. And thank you very much for sharing your insights, thoughts, sharing hope with us. And good luck for the rest of your visit here in Finland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.